Hey there, and welcome back to Common Knowledge. I just got back from the Hobbit pre-release at my local game store, and I had a pretty good time. Went 2-1, felt pretty good about it. And the person that I lost to had been on the Pro Tour, so I felt really okay about losing to them. Anyway, I had a good time. I think this set is pretty cool. I think the limited environment is surprisingly good. I didn't expect that for a couple reasons. One, because it's a small set. I just generally don't think small sets have enough in them. I think they're too small. I don't like that there aren't archetypes for every single color pair. That generally feels weird to me. But that being said, I think for a small set, this one works quite well. There's a lot of really cool cards in there. There's a lot of really good synergies, some things that I didn't even consider, where my opponent was able to, use a card to put one of my guys back on top of my library, and then was able to use a different thing to mill me. And I went, whoa, that's crazy. But they couldn't just mill me. They had to draw their second card. And so they had to use a combination of cards in a really cool way to be able to just get rid of one of my creatures that I really wanted. But yeah, it was cool. I got some good cards. I think the most expensive thing I got the just the normal art of the Mythic Bilbo card. I forgot the name of the Mythic Bilbo, the blue one that allows you to cast instants and sorceries and artifacts from your graveyard. Pretty cool. But more importantly, especially for this channel, I wanted to talk about how some of the cards that I came into contact with and got to play with and got played against, how those really affected my thoughts on how this set might affect the Pauper format. And what kind of cards that we might see show up in our Pauper decks. Is there anything that's even worth it in this set? I remember looking at this set. I went through the whole thing. There's a whole 3+ hour video of me looking through every single common in both the Eternal Hobbit set and the Standard Hobbit set, and just giving them ratings and saying this is kind of my buyer's guide. Well, this is the most interesting cards I saw. These are the ones that I think might have an impact in Pauper. Maybe they're not necessarily the best cards, but they are cards that I could see seen play, or at least just ones that interested me. That's why I call it the most interesting and not necessarily the best. There might be some cards out there that you like, that you think might be good. And, if there's something that I don't mention, go ahead and throw it down in the comments. And I would love to hear your reasoning on why you pick some of your cards. But I want to go through mine. How many cards do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 8 cards with a couple honorable mentions here. So why don't we get started? This one, Lakeshore Apothecary, 1 and a blue for 1/2 human cleric with vigilance. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Now, I'm not. This is an honorable mention in that I don't actually think it will make an impact in the Pauper format. That's not what I'm worried about. We have other cards that kind of do this thing. Maybe not with vigilance. Maybe not a 1/2. But I think there are flyers. I think there are fairies that can do this. I know there are other cards that do things on your second draw and get +1/+1 counters or something like that. I will say this was a house in limited. I drew 3 of these things from my pool and played every single one of them and triggered them quite a bit. And having vigilance and just swinging in and not being bothered, I got to put the black arrow on one of them, so it also had reach, and that was nasty. I just felt awesome. I didn't get any of, there's like a blackbird, I forgot the name of it. I didn't get any of them in my packs, but somebody also played that against me, and that just gets a +1/+1 counter every time you draw a card, no matter what. Not your second draw, just any draw. you get to put counters on that thing, and that thing smoked me. There was just nothing I could do. So both of those blue cards I think are really good ones if you're looking for some limited blue action. It was great. It was great. Oh, what did I play? I should have talked about what I played. Obviously, I played blue. I played blue and green. It was kind of a landfall thing. There weren't actually as many elves in there as I wanted to be able to play any really good elf synergies. I did get a couple of things that were pretty good. I got Thranduil. Not this one. He was in one of my prize packs though. I got this Thranduil, which was quite good, giving the pump effect to everything and having the landfall to generate elves was really good. I never once cast the sorcery side, although I think it's perfectly fine. And then one of my mythics was Elrond, and this Elrond is really good, really good, especially when I just had some mana dorks that could just tap for mana, but that counts as activating an ability of a creature, so I just kept drawing cards for it. It was that part was pretty good, but those are my good elves, and I didn't have many other elves outside of that, so the I don't think my deck was all that good, but I was able to generate at least some elves, and then I also got the dancing. Yeah, Dancing from Dark to Dawn. That was my promo card, and this one also worked out quite well, especially when I had Thranduil out, and so I was making bears and elves on every land, and that was really good when you got them to work. But again, we're not here to talk about rare and mythic cards. We're here to talk about common cards. So I ended up having a pretty good pre-release, and I think the that Lakeshore Apothecary was really solid and limited. I don't think it'll really do much in Pauper. Before I get into the list proper exactly, I do want to say the best thing we're going to see from The Hobbit is that they brought back these land cyclers. Not in the standard set, very unfortunately, but they are in the Eternal set. They're in the Welcome decks or whatever. So these are seen reprints. Not all of them, I guess, but Eagles, Lorien, Troll, and Oliphant are all seen reprints within the set. No Generosent, so only 4 of the 5, which is extremely annoying to me, but mostly from like an OCD perspective. But also, I think Generosent's a really good one. I think it sees more play than Oliphant or Eagles for sure. But it's really great news that Lorien is getting a reprint. This hopefully will make some of these prices go slightly down. And Troll is also, not as expensive. You can get it for less than $1, but Troll I would also like to see go down in price just so people have more access to this. These are the best land cyclers in the game. They see a ton of play, and so it is really nice that they are all getting reprints. And I think all of these cards are better than literally anything we will see in the Hobbit, in the standard Hobbit set. So I did want to at least point these out, but it's also a little unfair. That's not quite what we're doing here. Let's get into the real list, and we will start with I'm going in color order, not really by any other reason other than just going by colors. So there's no white cards I thought were good. There's the one the one when it dies you recruit, and I think recruit's a really good ability, but I don't think that guy is all that good. I think we just have better versions of that Infestation Sage or Doom Traveler or Hunted Witness or whatever. There's just so many of those, and I think most of those end up being better than the recruit guy. So skipping over white. Blue, Plunder the Trollshaws is 1 and a blue for a Trollshaws is 1 and a blue for an instant. Draw a card. If the spell was cast from a graveyard, you draw 2 cards instead, and it flashbacks for 3 and a blue. I kind of feel like I'm forced to put this one on the list. I don't actually think this card is very good. I don't think it will see much, if any, Pauper play. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, we kind of have a card in the format that is mostly like this, and that is Think Twice, which costs the same to begin with. You pay 1 and a blue to draw a card at an instant speed. This flashbacks for 2 and a blue, so cheaper, but you still only draw the 1 card, whereas this says, hey, you pay a 4th mana for the flashback, but now you draw 2 cards because you're casting it from a graveyard. Okay, sure, there's maybe a trade-off here of which one you'd play. Here's the thing. We don't play Think Twice. I haven't seen a soul play Think Twice in Pauper for a long time, if ever. So I don't think this is going to do much impact. The other card that I want to point out that is not exactly similar, but at least something worth noting is Deep Analysis, because this does see play. Not a ton of play. It sees like 1, maybe 2 copies in certain decks, mostly mono blue terror decks. But it's 3 and a blue for a sorcery. Target player draws 2 cards, but it flashbacks for 2 and paying 3 life to also draw you 2 cards. So it kind of flips Plunder the Trollshaws in that you pay less for this one up front, and then you pay more on the flashback. Whereas Deep Analysis, you pay more up front and then less on the flashback. The difference is in Mono Blue Terror, you are milling yourself a ton. So you will mill this card into your graveyard. You won't ever pay the 4 because it's in your graveyard now. So you'll flash it back for the cheaper cost. And so you get 2 cards for cheaper, and this one forces you to get 1 card for cheaper and then 2 cards for expensive. And I just, we in those decks we still only see 1 or 2 max of Deep Analysis ever see play. So I really don't see how there's no deck out there that's going, oh, I already play 4 Deep Analysis and it's so good and I need more cards like it. I guess I need Plunder the Trollshaws. That's just not what I've seen in any decks. Maybe that changes someday. I don't think it will. So I think Plunder the Trollshaws is something to consider, I guess. It's actually a really good limited card. Again, some really good, especially with that bird that I didn't get that gets counters every time you draw cards. This was really good at activating that. So Plunder the Trollshaws, I wanted to mention it, but again, I don't think it's necessarily going to be a hot topic when it comes to the Pauper format. Let me get off that dancing bear. I've got these all in tabs, or in grouped tabs to make this easier for me. So our next card is going to be Reverent Howl, which is 2 and a black for an instant. You choose one. Either target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life, or target creature gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink until end of turn. This is kind of 2 cards that we don't see played in the Pauper format, but I think when you kind of combine them into a modal spell like this, there's something worth talking about. So let's take this this first mode of the target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. We have that in the format. It's called Blood Pact. It's again an instant. Target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. So this is strictly better Blood Pact because we have another thing. It costs the same amount, same speed, same text, but Reverend Howl just does another thing. So never need to play Blood Pact again. Not that you were. No, I don't think anybody really was. But this is a card you could have played in the Pauper format, and now you no longer need to. The other card, or the other mode on this, is target creature gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink until end of turn. We do have that at instant speed in the Pauper format, and that was from Duskmourn. Given to violence, 1 and a black for an instant, target creature gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink until end of turn. So this is a mana cheaper for this effect, and this is not a terrible effect for a combat trick. Do you want to pay 1 extra to have that combat trick? Probably not. I probably wouldn't feel great about it, but it being an option as well as the drawing the cards option isn't bad, and I do like that there's going to be different times in the games where you might want one or want the other. If I have a lot of life and I need a couple more resources, I can play the top part. If I don't have a lot of life and I really need the life back, I can play the combat trick version, or the combat trick version whenever it comes up where you can potentially blow your opponents out. I think this is all good. The thing that really matters to me is that this is instant speed. And that's why it might be useful compared to, Night's Whisper variants and things like that can also draw you 2 cards and lose you 2 life. But when you're playing at instant speed, you can hold on to all your cards. You can figure out, okay, do I want to play a removal spell? Do I, you can hold this up to potentially use the combat trick if you need to. And if your opponent doesn't end up doing anything, well, then you can instant speed at the end of their turn, draw a couple cards, lose a couple life, but now you have more resources for the next turn. Will this see play anywhere? I don't necessarily think so. There are decks that I think it could work in. Could it work in a Dimir Terror list? I think probably. It's an instant, so if it gets milled, no big deal. If you get to play the part where you can draw a couple cards, great. If you want to make a Tolarian Terror a 7/7 with lifelink, that's pretty good to me. I'll take that. That can be a big life swing. So I think there are decks that could use a card like this. I think we might see some people try it out. Maybe. We'll see. Three mana is a lot. 3 mana is a lot of mana, especially to hold up. But I think if you are in a more control-y list like a Dimir, that you don't mind holding on to your mana, holding things up, and then if your opponent just doesn't do anything, you're fine to go grab a couple cards. I thought this was cool. I thought this was really good at pre-release. I didn't play against it, and I didn't play it, but I did see some people at the other tables that were playing this, and they got a decent amount of value out of it. So, Reverent Howl, pretty good card. Next up is Pinecone Strike. 1 in a red for an instant, choose one or both. Pinecone Strike deals 3 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, you exile it instead, or, I suppose, destroy target artifact token. The token part, man, really does kill this card. This thing could have been solid. Could have been really solid. And instead, it's fine, I think. I don't think this will see as much play as some people are talking about. The easy comparison is to something like Suplex, which is the same mana cost, 1 in a red. It's time for a sorcery. You choose one. Suplex deals 3 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Same exact text there. Or you exile target artifact. That's a couple big differences there. One big difference is this is instant speed. That matters a lot. Being able to do 3 damage at instant speed is kind of infinitely better than doing 3 damage at sorcery speed. But by that same token, no pun intended, being able to exile target artifact is way better than being able to destroy target artifact token. It's like double infinite better. Destroying a target artifact token, if that thing has indestructible, I don't know if there are any artifact tokens that would have indestructible. I'm sure there's a way to make an artifact creature that has indestructible that is a copy that's a token, something like that would be able to have indestructible. There almost assuredly is. Yeah, like I could do. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I have a feeling there's a way. But how many artifact tokens matter enough that you want to play that part of the mode? I mean, it's a nice bonus because you can choose both, but how many times is that going to be available to you? I suppose, if your opponent plays what's it called? The 1 mana vampire. 1 mana, it's a red vampire. It comes down and makes a blood token. That's okay, sure. I can exile that creature and destroy your blood token, or force you to use the blood token that right then, if that's what you're, if you're able to do it and you can do it, maybe you'll do it then. But if not, you're forcing them into that situation where they have to use the blood or lose it. This is still just so much better. Even at sorcery speed, being able to exile target artifact means you're going to be able to exile lands. That's a really important thing. Exile the bridges, which is an extremely important thing in affinity decks, against affinity decks rather. And then being able to exile things like Utrom Monitor or Mirror Enforcer, or even Refurbished Familiar. There's plenty of things that this is really good at getting rid of, and Pinecone Strike doesn't really get rid of. I mean, I suppose this part does, but the destroying the artifact token part doesn't quite do that. So I think this is fine, but in a format where we just have Lightning Bolt that kind of does this, but can also go face. Yeah, it doesn't exile it. This is going to take care of sneaky snacks and things like that, and that'll be okay. I think people might try it, but I think people will get upset that this mode almost never triggers or isn't actually all that useful. I guess the best case scenario is that maybe you take out a clue token before your opponent's able to have the mana to crack the clue. I guess that's pretty good. I don't know. We'll try Pinecone Strike, but I don't think this will make much of an impact in the format. But I think of the cards in the Hobbit, this one is on the higher side of potential playability. Next up is another red card, and that is Ragged Shortspear. I remember in the Pauper Buyer's Guide, I kind of asked the question, is this better than all the other discard 1 draw 2s in the format? I guess let's read it first. Ragged Shortspear is 1 in red for an artifact equipment. When this equipment enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. That should be very familiar to any sort of Pauper player. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and it equips for 3, which is not cheap. That's not a cheap equip cost. So again, you got to be thinking There's a lot of cards that do this in the Pauper format, and a lot of them are really good at this point. Now, why are you playing any of these? Well, the answer right now is Sneaky Snacker as something that can be in your graveyard when you draw your third card in a turn, which is very easy to do. When you draw a card at the beginning of your turn and you can discard a card and draw two, well, that's your third card at that point. Sneaky Snacker can come back. Sneaky Snacker can even be the card you discard, and now it comes back. What I really like about Ragged Shortspear is that this will stay on the battlefield, which we have other ones that do that too, and we'll go through some of these here in a second. But this one stays on the battlefield, but it can then be equipped to the Sneaky Snacker. And imagine taking your Sneaky Snacker, which is currently a 2/1 when it comes onto the battlefield, and then you can pay 3 mana the next turn, equip this to your Sneaky Snacker, and now you have 4/1 in the air. And that's really going to force an opponent to have to deal with this, because now it's not just taking little chunks. This is taking big chunks out of their life total. 5 hits from this and they're dead. And if they do take care of it, well, you have ways of getting it back from your graveyard, and this thing should still be on the battlefield, and you can just re-equip it. That is probably more mana than you want to spend on it, but if you're taking out big chunks of their life total, I think some people might actually do that. Now, again, we have a lot of cards that do similar kinds of things. Is this one actually going to see any play? What is it really up against? Well, the main one, the easiest comparison anyway, is Melded Moxite, which is the same mana cost, an artifact that enters, discard a card, draw 2. All that's the same, but this isn't an equipment. Instead, you can pay 3, sacrifice this artifact, and make a tap 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token instead. So making a body is pretty good, especially a body that you can make at instant speed at the end of an opponent's turn. It is tapped, so it's not going to block for you or anything like that. But if you can make it at the end of your opponent's turn and now you can swing in with a 2/2, okay. Or have that 2/2, I guess, do whatever you want. You can sacrifice it to draw cards or something. But this is okay. And this has seen a lot of play. Is the Ragged Shortspear better? I think in some ways it is. I think being able to put this onto the Sneaky Snacker and getting that extra power boost is probably more valuable in a number of settings than making a tap 2/2 robot artifact creature. Melded Moxite will still see play. Don't you worry about that. But I think we can make an argument that Ragged Shortspear in some cases will be better. So I think if it's going to take up any slots in people's decks, it's probably going to take Melded Moxite slots. What other cards are we playing? Grab the Prize is still probably the gold standard here. Being able to do this exact same thing. It's a sorcery now, but you discard a card, you draw 2 cards. And then if the discarded card wasn't a land, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. Just doing some little burn as you get a bunch of value. You are drawing cards. If you're using the Sneaky Snacker, you're getting the Sneaky Snacker back, so it's like you didn't discard anything. If you discard a Madness card, you can cast the Madness card, so it's like you didn't discard anything. This just gets you a ton of value, and if you paired with things like Gutter Snipe or Kessig Flame Breather, now you're getting even more damage from this. This Grab the Prize is really, really good. It's the best one of these. The second best one of these is Highway Robbery, 1 and a red for a sorcery as well. Discard a card or sack a land. That's the important thing here, is that you can sack lands instead of having to discard the card, if that ever comes up. But you still draw 2 cards. And the other big part is that this can be plotted, which means you can pay its same mana cost and exile it from your hand. You can cast it as a sorcery on a later turn without paying its mana cost. So now, you turn 2, you do this. Turn 3, you can discard the card or sack the land, whichever you prefer. But now you have all your mana up, except I guess the land that you sacrifice. I guess you can tap that before it gets sacrificed, and so it's in your pool. But having all of your mana available to you when you get these 2 cards is a big deal, because now you've got a lot more value and a lot more resources available to you as you are able to cast any of those cards that you get. You don't have to wait until the next turn like you sometimes do with a Grab the Prize or a Melded Moxite. The other one we sometimes see is Bitter Reunion. We saw it very briefly when the Hawkeye's Bow combo was in the Pauper format for a bit. Because this is an enchantment, so like Melded Moxite or like the Ragged Shortspear, this will stay on the battlefield when you cast it. But again, you discard a card, you draw 2, you pay 1, sack the enchantment, and creatures you control gain haste. That's why it was good for the Hawkeye's Bow combo, because your Seeker of Skybreak would now be able to tap and untap itself the turn it comes in with the Hawkeye's Bow, and then you can do the infinite that way. So Bitter Reunion, it still sees some play anyway, because it's nice to give creatures haste sometimes. But I think without the combo, this has dropped off a little bit just naturally. And I don't necessarily think the decks that played Bitter Reunion are going to start playing Ragged Shortspear instead, but this is still one that you could have considered at some point as one of these discard 1 draw 2s. And I think now you're thinking, well, this one has to slot in somewhere in that set. So when I'm thinking the best ones of these in the Pauper format, I still think the answer is number 1, Grab the Prize, number 2, Highway Robbery, and then number 3, I think you can make a case that it could be Ragged, it could be Melded, or in very specific scenarios, it could still be Bitter Reunion. But I think these 5 are now kind of taking this slot. And Demand Answers could also be an option as well. Demand Answers is a little bit different in that you can sacrifice a thing or sacrifice a artifact, creature, both. Sacrifice an artifact. So sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. You wanna show up there? Yeah, there you go. So Demand Answers, and there's also a Marvel card that does the same thing. This one's also instant speed. There's some things to consider, but I think Ragged Shortspear, especially as I mentioned, having that kind of synergy with Sneaky Snacker of putting a thing, this puts a thing on the table. It can get Sneaky Snacker from your graveyard to the table, and then you can equip the Shortspear to it. And that's a pretty good combination of things that you can do for kind of no extra mana, no extra worries, no extra cards needed for that. And you're able to just kind of make a very resilient 4/1 flyer that can just get in pretty easily. I think Ragged Shortspear is going to see some play. We'll see some people try it out with Sneaky Snacker. Snacker still might catch the ban. Maybe it's banned, in a couple days. We'll see. A little bit, fingers crossed. I'm not the biggest Snacker fan, but if it's not banned, I think this will definitely see some play with Ragged Shortspear. Okay, let's move on to a green card, Wargling, which is 1 and a green for a 2/2 wolf with Ferocious. Whenever this creature attacks, while you control a creature with power 4 or greater, until the end of turn, this creature gets +1/+0, and creatures you control gain trample. So I didn't write this one down on my list from the buyer's guide. And I think the more I'm considering it, the more I'm starting to think maybe there is something here. So it's a grizzly bear. It's a 1 and a green for a 2/2 creature. That's grizzly bear stats. This Ferocious, though, is not the hardest thing to pull off. It's pretty easy to get a creature with power 4 or greater. And this being able to give all your creatures trample and also make himself a little bigger in the meantime, pretty good. I don't think Simic Terror is much of a deck in Pauper right now. It was a thing in Standard for a little bit when we had some very broken Standard cards. But it hasn't really seen a whole lot of Pauper play. I think if you're going to be playing with Terror, it's very easy to go mono blue, obviously, but it's also very easy to go Dimir. It's pretty easy to go Izzet. I wouldn't really go Azorius with it, and like I said, I don't think Simic is necessarily the way to go either. But if you did go with a Simic, if you went with a Simic Terror deck, I think this could be your little creature. You put this out, you can mill a bunch of cards afterward. If you're able to get a Tolarian Terror out quickly or Cryptic Serpent out pretty quickly, being able to swing in with this guy as a 3/2 and give all of your Tolarian Terrors and Cryptic Serpents trample is a hell of a thing to be able to do, and that's pretty solid to be able to swing in with all that power. Um, he doesn't have much protection by himself, but if you're in Simic, then I guess you have access to counter spells. I think there's something kind of to this. I don't know how many other decks it goes in outside of a potential Simic Terror deck. There's certainly ways of making big creatures in green in lots of decks. I don't think this gets played in something like Monstertron, but there's probably some green stompy stuff that could use a card like this, maybe. It's something I wanted to point out. It was mostly just the Simic Terror idea to me, but I thought this performed quite well at pre-release as well, especially when I was able to get a couple of big creatures onto the battlefield, knowing that, hey, I can swing with Wargling and it's going to die this turn, but I still get everything with trample and I get to swing in with a big trample turn. That's okay. I'll take that. I'm happy with that outcome. So I like Wargling. And also it's one of the cheaper, it is the cheapest type of effect like this in the Pauper format. The other one, not as cheap, but pretty close, is Drover Grizzly, which is 2 and a green for a 4/2 bear mount. When this creature attacks while saddled, creatures you control gain trample until end of turn, and it saddles for 1. So pretty easy to saddle this thing, but similar to the Wargling, the 2 toughness means it's probably going to get blocked and traded with, and you're kind of mostly only get this once, but not too bad. This costs 3 though, and the Wargling costs 2. I think I like the Wargling of those 2 cards, and not that the Drover Grizzly sees play, but I think that with Wargling's lower mana cost, you might be able to build a deck that utilizes it in some way. So I kind of like Wargling. It gets what is this, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? It's my fifth most not I don't want to rank these. I'm not saying it's the 5th most interesting, but of all my interesting cards, this is the 5th one I'm talking about. What is the 6th one? Well, it's Mirkwood Nurturer, which is again a card that I didn't write down during my buyer's guide. I didn't think this was all that crazy, but the more I thought about it, the more I go, okay, I can see some of the value here. This is a bounce card. Mirkwood Nurturer is 2 and a hybrid Simic for a 3/2 creature, Elf Ranger. And when this creature enters, you return up to 1 other target permanent you control to its owner's hand. If you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So if you're putting it into an empty board, wait, it says 1 other target permanent. So do you have to? I can't remember if you actually have to do this, because I think it would say you may return up to 1. I'm not 100% sure on that one. Regardless, you're mostly going to be playing this because you want to bounce something. You have something else that you want to play, and whether it be a Tithing Blade or something that has some kind of enters the battlefield trigger. But a 3 mana 3/2, which will mostly be a 4/3 when you return something, that's okay. Initially, I didn't like this because we have another card in blue that does this, I think, better. It's debatable, but I think better. That's my old buddy Dreamstalker, which is 1 and a blue for a 1/5 illusion. When this creature enters, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. So this one, this doesn't say target. So maybe knowing that there's a target permanent means that you can fail to find a target, I suppose. I still like Dreamstalker. It's cheaper. 2 mana instead of 3. I just like that. As a 1/5, this thing blocks all day long. No, it's not very powerful, but if I'm going to bounce things, I want to be able to bounce things and have everything be cheap. And if I can bounce something for only 2 mana, that means I can play that thing on that turn too. And Mirkwood Nurturer is not always going to be able to do that. Having to pay 3 mana for this and then bounce something back into your hand, you might not have enough mana to replay that same card that turn. And that would be a feel bad for me, even if you do get a 4/3 creature out of the deal. And that's a sizable amount of bulk. That thing's going to swing in, it's going to pressure the opponents. I understand that this thing's pretty good. And also, you gotta pay attention that this is a Simic card. This isn't just a blue card, even though Dreamstalker is, a blue card. We do have a green card that does this. So we have a 3-mana Sticky Tongue Sentinel, which is a 3/3 Frog Warrior with Reach. Whenever this creature, or when this creature enters, return up to one other target permanent you control to its owner's hand. So this kind of is the same thing as the Nurturer. So now your question is, do you want this 4/3 or do you want this 3/3 with Reach? You can kind of decide that on your own, but this having the flexibility of going into either deck or a Simic deck and working with both is something to consider, I suppose. I'm probably going to stick with Dreamstalker, but I think Mirkwood Nurturer is a pretty darn solid card if you're going to try to do some kind of Dimir bounce, Dimir blade, I suppose. And I do have a Dimir blinky bouncy blade deck. I don't know if I'm going to put Mirkwood Nurturer into it. I think I'm pretty happy with Dreamstalker, but I can understand the people who are excited about Mirkwood Nurturer. 2 more to go, and we're on to what I think is probably the best card in this set that's not the Mana Cyclers, and that is Giant's Boulder. This, I was so angry that I didn't get any in my 6 packs at pre-release. I did get 1, I think, from my 6 prize packs, and then a friend who was also playing with me, he was also at the pre-release, said, hey, you want these extra commons? You seem excited about Giant's Boulder. And like, I am, please give me every copy you have. And he happily obliged. So thank you, Kyle. Anyway, Giant's Boulder is a single mana, colorless mana, any mana you want to pay for an artifact. And when this artifact enters, you scry 2. You can pay 1 and tap it to add a mana of any color, or you can pay 7, tap, and sacrifice this artifact to destroy target permanent. This card does so much. It's amazing. I think this is such a good card because it's kind of 3 cards in one, or at the very least, it's 2 cards in one, because it's kind of half a card, and a whole card. Let me show you what I mean by that. So it's kind of like a Candy Trail in that it costs 1 mana, and when it enters the battlefield, you scry 2. Same thing as a Candy Trail. Now, a Candy Trail is a food clue, so you're able to sacrifice it, gain 3 life, draw a card. Those are big things. That's one of the reasons Candy Trail is so good, is not only being able to give you good card selection when it comes into play at such a cheap cost, but also gains you life, draws you cards. This just does a whole lot. That's why Monstertron really likes this card, but other Tron decks are also big fans of Candy Trail. Now, Giant's Boulder, still same mana cost, enters battlefield, scry 2. That's pretty good. You're still getting half of what you get from the Candy Trail. The other card is Prophetic Prism. 2 mana for an artifact. When it enters, you draw a card. That's not the part we get, but we do get the filter here, the pay 1, tap, and add a mana of any color. So Giant's Boulder is able to do the filter, and it's able to do that more cheaply than Prophetic Prism. It doesn't draw you the card, which is a really good part about Prophetic Prism. So I'm not saying this is strictly better than either of those 2 cards that we saw. I am saying it's strictly better than a Universal Solvent, which is 1 mana for an artifact. You can pay 7, tap, sacrifice this artifact, and destroy target permanent. That is exactly the text that's on Giant's Boulder. So you are 100% getting a Universal Solvent, which is not a card we see get much play in the Pauper format at all. But it's not a bad effect, especially when you're playing a Tron deck. So I have a Monstertron deck, and you think about the things that Monstertron wants. Monstertron wants to be able to find their Tron lands. You're going to be able to do that because you can scry 2. Monstertron wants to be able to make green mana, or sometimes red mana, or sometimes even blue mana, to be able to cast their spells. And if you're in Tron, that means you don't you're making a bunch of colorless mana, but you're not necessarily making the right colors of mana that you need. You need some kind of mana fixing. This also has mana fixing. And then if you have Tron online, you can tap 3 lands and make 7 colorless mana. Oh, look, I have 7 colors. I have a ability that needs 7 colorless mana, and I can destroy a target permanent. And Monstertron has a lot of trouble taking out pesky permanents of the opponents. It can sometimes use fight effects or bite effects to be able to take out some creatures. It can use the Pinnacle Kill Ship to take out some creatures, but when it comes to pesky artifacts or enchantments, you kind of have the Scour from Existence, which is a 7 mana thing that exiles a permanent, and that's pretty good. But this just being able to bolt that on to what is half a Candy Trail and half a Prophetic Prism, I think this is damn good. I really like it. So what I ended up doing as soon as I came back from pre-release, I put 2 copies of this in my Monstertron deck. I took out 1 Candy Trail and I took out 1 Prophetic Prism. Will I go back? Maybe. It's possible, but I this is the one I want to test out the most. I think 2 copies is about right. I don't think you necessarily need 4. Maybe you could go to 3, but I think 2 is going to be the sweet spot on this one. But as something that gives you card selection, mana fixes, and is removal, it's hard to think of a better card that Monstertron could have gotten. And honestly, a lot of different Tron decks. Any deck that uses Tron can probably use all 3 of these abilities. Giant's Boulder, I think best card in the set from a Pauper perspective. Really, really good card. All right, this is the last card left, and it is Long-bodied Grey Dog. I was shocked at how useful this card was during my entire pre-release. Will that translate to being incredibly useful in a Pauper format? Hard to say. But I think there is some hope for this one that you don't necessarily get from some of the other cards available to you in the format. 3 mana for Long-bodied Grey Dog. It's a 2/2 dog with flash and reach, and when this creature enters, you create a tapped treasure token. There aren't a ton of creatures in the format with reach or with flash. I mean, and even fewer that are 3 mana. I was looking at some, and there's some other 2/2s with flash, but they don't really do anything when they come into play. There's a 2 mana with flash that's the snake with death touch, and that can be kind of useful. There's plenty of little 1/1s with flash, or not even 1/1s necessarily, but there's like the Humbling Elder that can come in and make a creature smaller. There's the Ilvoid Galeblade, which is a 1 mana jellyfish scout, jellyfish something, jellyfish warrior maybe, that kind of acts as like a the sprite pirate thing. What's it called? I forgot. Anyway, the little 1/1 flash that can pay 4 and draw a card. That one's not in the Pauper format, but it's something that is very similar. So we have a lot of little things with flash, but this is, I think, one of the better cards with flash, and also it's completely colorless. Any deck can play this, and that's really important because you can be, think of the other decks that, I mean, let's talk about the other part of the card that matters here, which is when it enters, you create a treasure token. Yeah, it's tapped, but it is making you a treasure token, which will potentially ramp you up for the next turn, or at least for that one turn, right? Because you'll crack the token. But what other creatures in the format make treasure tokens that are really playable? There's Burdened Aerialist, I suppose. 3 mana for a 3/1. When you sacrifice a token, it gets flying and it makes a treasure when it comes in. That treasure is untapped, so you can use it right away if you need to. It's okay. It's okay. Not the best, but it's fine. Doesn't have flash speed though. Doesn't have reach. 3/1 versus a 2/2. You can make an argument of which one's better on that one, but I think I would take the dog over this, especially if I'm playing blue. Wouldn't I want to hold up all my mana, counter things if I need to, draw cards if I need to, but then if nothing happens at the end of a turn, I can just flash in the dog and get the token. Or if there's a combat trick scenario, flash in the dog and get the token. If you're going against fairies on the other side, flash in the dog with reach, block a fairy. That's pretty good. So I like the dog for lots of those reasons. The other creature that sees play in the format that makes treasure tokens is Jewel Thief, which is 3 mana, 2 and a green, for a 3/3 cat rogue with vigilance and trample, and when it enters, you create a treasure token. This one's a little bit different. This is a really good card and sees some play in Gruul Ramp or green stompy decks. for the most part. Any kind of green ramp deck or deck that ramps in some way probably will like Jewel Thief, especially if it's multiple colors because that treasure token mana fixes you. But it's still good even if you're just going mono green. So Jewel Thief generally better than the dog. I can't I can't. The cats are better than the dogs in this specific instance, especially with that reach and trample. Those are just better keywords to my ears than flash and reach. But Flash and Reach are still really good, and the idea that any deck can play this, I think blue is probably going to find the most use out of this. Black might find a little use out of this. I don't think white will get much use out of this, and I don't think red or I don't think red or green are going to get much use out of this either, because red can already make plenty of treasure tokens with other things, and green kind of just has the Jewel Thief, and I think you're almost always going to want to play the Jewel Thief instead of the dog in those decks. But for a completely colorless card with flash that's able to kind of be a combat trick and ramp you up in a color like blue, if you're playing, it wouldn't go in mono blue fairies. It wouldn't go in mono blue terror, but there are going to be decks that play blue, maybe even some Dimir decks that will like to hold up their mana and like to be able to play this as kind of a combat trick whenever they need to, and just will also sometimes flash this in at the end of an opponent's turn, which I did many times at pre-release, and make that treasure token tapped or whatever, but then you just go right to your turn and you untap it. So a thing that ramps you up and puts another body on the table, I was really, really impressed with Long-bodied Grey Dog, and it was always fun to say too. This was a fantastic card at pre-release, and I think it will see. I think it'll find little niches in the Pauper format and become something useful, if not a staple to any deck. But I think it will find a little bit of play and will be pretty good there. So again, if you're asking me what the best card in the format is from this set, I think it's Giant Boulder by a long shot. But of course, it's still like it's that they reprinted Lorien Revealed. That is still just the best thing they could have possibly done. Anyway, that is it. That is it from pre-release. It is it from my Hobbit content, or at least like the Hobbit spoilers and pre-release information for the Hobbit. That's what I think are the cards that are going to show up in the format in Pauper. What do you think? Is there anything that I missed? Do you think that Gandalf is any good? That common Gandalf that's a 4/5 with Ward 3 and can potentially shuffle itself back into your library and draw you a bunch of cards? I considered it here. There were some other cards that I considered from the buyer's guide that I thought, oh, maybe that'll make it somewhere. Maybe Smaug's Fury maybe is like a better Sure Strike, possibly. Maybe an Addercop. I did think Addercop did quite well as a reach Death Toucher that can also get bigger. That was pretty solid. Warg Tactics, I found a lot of good uses for in the pre-release as something that can either destroy a flyer or give one of your creatures a +1/+1 counter and hexproof and trample until end of turn. So that was a pretty useful card as well. And I even saw Hobbit Hole seeing some play, especially in pre-release for mana fixing purposes. And I still think that's something that could see play in the format if and when we get a whole lot more halflings or a whole lot more changelings. And halflings may be a little harder because we're kind of out of Lord of the Rings. I suppose there's never mind. There's some, could we get a Cimmerillion set? I don't know. I have no idea how any of that stuff works. But that's it. That's what I thought. Tell me about other cards that you were playing in pre-release. Anything, did your pre-release go well? But anything else you think will show up in the Pauper format? But that's what I've got for you. Till next time, catch you later.